12 minutes after 8 o'clock Pacific time here on CBC Radio 1. A BC construction organization is backing Taseko's proposed new prosperity mine. An editorial in the Journal of the Independent Contractors and Business Association of BC says the mine would be good for the province. But the planned gold and copper mine is controversial, with opposition from some environmentalists and some First Nations. Phil Hochstein is the president of the Independent Contractors Association. He's on the line with us this morning. Good morning, Phil.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. Why is your organization backing New Prosperity?
Well, a project of this size, which will generate $11 billion of economic activity, is really an economic engine for the province. But, you know, when you talk billions and zillions, it's hard for people to relate, and that's part of the reason why we put something out. If you do, when the New Prosperity Mine goes ahead, that kind of revenue for the government would generate things like a new subway system in Vancouver, another Caribou Connector 4-lane highway, a new 7 major hospital expansions or renewals, 3 elementary schools, 12 MRI machines. So that kind of economic activity, we try to bring that home to people, because it's the kind of people have trouble often connecting the dots between an economic development project and what it means for them, and we're trying to get people to understand what it means for them.
Who are you trying to convince here?
I think, you know what, I think I'm trying to convince, British Columbians at large, although I think they got it. I think if you looked at the last election, it was run on 2 visions of the province. One was saying yes to economic development and job creation and using our resources for that. And the other vision was no to those kinds of projects. Well, the yes vision won, and won handily. And it played out even more starkly out in Williams Lake, where the New Prosperity Mine is being built. The local candidate there, the Liberal candidate, Donna Barnett, ran on making this project go ahead. Her opposition ran on it not going ahead. And last election, 4 years ago, Donna won with about 40 votes, a margin of 40 votes. This time she won with a margin over 2,000 votes. So the people in British Columbia, and especially in Williams Lake, have spoken about wanting and needing this economic development opportunity.
And so my understanding is that there was one point of view in your magazine and not others represented. How fair is that?
Well, I think it's very fair. I don't think the environmentalists never point out to the stark choices that people have to make when it comes to saying no to economic development. You turn down a mine like New Prosperity, that's, I think, 500 local jobs, and in the mine it pays on average of $108,000 a year. It means that the operating deficit of the city of Williams Lake would be eliminated if 200 of those additional, because of increased taxes from the people work in the mine. They don't talk about the opportunity that would have for young people to stay in the area and grow their families. And certainly as a parent, you don't want like to keep your children as close to home as you can as they grow up. And this would allow that to happen. I don't really see that in the environmentalist stories at all. And I participated in the environmental hearings up in Williams Lake in the summer, and the purpose of those environmental hearings is to determine what mitigation strategies, if any, are necessary in order for the mine to go ahead. So my industry, the construction industry, will build to the highest sustainable levels, and we do that now, and we would do that with the mine. And the mine itself has already made changes to their design to protect Fish Lake, for example, and we're willing to spend $300 million more to do that. So I believe we can do it to the highest environmental standards possible, and then we need to bring balance to the discussion. Can we do this in an environmentally responsible way and still create the jobs and economic activity and tax revenue that all British Columbians want?
Now, the decision isn't made by your members or even the public of BC. The decision is made by the Environmental Review Panel in Ottawa. What, if anything, are you doing to convince them of the merits of this project?
Well, I think ultimately it's decided by the cabinet of the federal cabinet, because the environmental report ends up going to cabinet.
Right, they make a recommendation to cabinet. Yeah.
That's right, and they make the final decision. So So I think it's important for the politicians. Our publications go to the politicians so they understand what's at stake. It goes to all the voters, or it doesn't go to all the voters, it goes to all opinion leaders in the province so they can form an opinion and spread the word if they think it's appropriate. And I think the government does take into account what people think and what voters think. And our job is to connect the dots for voters between the things that they want and need from government and from their regions and the need for economic development in a balanced, sustainable fashion.
You say at the beginning of the conversation, we were talking about the economic spin-offs from New Prosperity and the money that would flow into government coffers, and that could lead to, infrastructure projects and capital projects. That's not guaranteed, though, right? I mean, just because the government has money coming in doesn't necessarily mean they'll build X, Y, or Z. How do you keep the pressure on throughout the project to make sure your members benefit?
Well, it's not, I think, how the province would benefit because, the construction industry doesn't build things for themselves. We build things for others. So we don't build a hospital only for construction workers or their families. We build it for all of British Columbians. I think what the government always struggles with is an increasing demand for services and infrastructure and a very constrained revenue stream tax base, right? So our goal is to expand, you can fight over the pie and say more should go for infrastructure and more should go for services, or make the pie larger so that there's a money both for increased social services and increased infrastructure development. So I think, and you only have two choices. You can either raise taxes to do that, or you try to make economic activity and grow the economic pie. And surely, I think most British Columbians would rather grow the economic pie. And as I said, I think the last election really spoke to that. It's about the economy and jobs. So I think the solution to our infrastructure problems and our social service problems isn't to say, who's going to get what or more. Let's get both of them more by building a project that would generate $11 billion in economic activity.
Phil, will your organization be issuing opinions on Northern Gateway or on Site C, for example?
Actually, we're thinking about that. Yeah, it's funny you asked that. There's a big port expansion down here we may be interested in commenting on, and the LNG, the twinning of the Kinder Morgan line, and all those economic activities. I think people want things to be done in a balanced, sustainable, responsible way, but they don't want nothing to happen. So I think our job is to point out the economic benefits that come with that and remind people that it can be done in a sustainable way. Look, the people in Williams Lake care as much about the environment as anybody else, and they don't want their environment in any way desecrated or harmed, and they will watch what's going on at Williams Lake at New Prosperity, and they've said through the election that they know that could happen, and they're going to watch and make sure it happens. I mean, they want their families to stay up in Williams Lake, and 96% of the money in the local mine up there stays in the area. So that creates a lot of jobs, not only for mining people, but for restaurants and car dealers and garages and beauty parlors and sign shops, and you name it. The money gets spread within the community and gives everybody a much better hope for the future.
Phil, we'll leave it there. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Bye-bye.